Today we are focusing about a new lecture which is about the secure coding standard. With a courtesy to OWASP, which is the Open Web Application Security Project. We will discuss a lot of things which are related to the secure coding standards. So we need to keep in our mind that we are focusing about the standards. Standards means those things which are recognized by any specific body, and then everyone has to follow that particular standard, and then anyone who is following those standards will be considered that yes, this software code is written in a secured manner. So as you know that OWASP, which is the Open Web Application Security Project, it is the very vast services related to the security. So now, with their courtesy, we are starting this lecture, and we will see that how in the real life, in actually with the industry, how based on the existing and the current projects, they are coming up and what the standards they are suggesting and what the problem and issues they are actually facing are pointing out related to the secure coding. So our today's lecture will be in multiple aspects, which will cover about the secure coding different mechanisms, and we'll share a few of the examples with us as well, and also elaborate about the standards as well. So here we start. When we go to the next slide, so you can see that what we are supposed to discuss today. We are supposed to discuss today about the secure coding practices, input validation, output encoding, authentication and password management, session management, access control, and cryptographic practices. Now, these are the standards for the secure coding, which means what are the standards which we apply for secure coding practices, or what are the standards we need to check for the input validations. We need to check what type of standards for the output encoding, for authentication, for access control, for session management, and all of the points that what we discussed. So what are the standards? What are the standards provided there to check them? In case if suppose we will be following all the standards carefully, then it means that we will be able to minimize the chances of the vulnerabilities, minimize the chances of the attacks, our software, or even we will be able to minimize the chances of the failure of our software, what we are coding or what we are designing, what we are intend to release in the market. So we'll go for one-to-one, and you will see, and probably we get a chance, I will show you the one of the questionnaire that will give you an idea that these things what we are discussing, they are what is their actual scope in the real world. Now, the other things, like we are supposed to see that how we can see about the error handling and logging, because you remember that the SQL injection and other attacks, we discuss about them, that the hackers, they are trying to get the information from your error logs as well, and from your application logs as well. So there are the multiple sources and multiple points from where they can exploit our software. Then we will discuss about what are the standards for the data protection and communication security, system configuration, database security, file management, memory management, and as well as the general coding practices. So you can see here that these are the so many things, and all of this group of each is leading to the group of different types of attacks. So as we discussed that error handling and the logging, maybe it can help related to the SQL injection, data protection, like while we are applying the different encryption techniques on that, communication security, which is normally known as the network security, system configuration itself, database security, which is the backend security of our software, because when we are designing a software, normally most of our softwares are having the backend and the front end, and the file management itself, and how we are managing the file, the security of the file, and how we are making sure that it will not be misused. And at the same time, we are also managing about the memory management to avoid the buffer flow and the other things, other issues or other problems. So these all things we are following the some sort of the means standards which are known as the secure coding standards, which are means internationally recognized. So following those standards, we are trying to minimize them and we are trying to reach to our destination safely as much as it is possible. Now you can see from here in our next slide, we are discussing here that we need to define a set of general software security coding practices. Okay, so it means then when we are writing, when we are starting to write a program, to write a code, so we must have our general set of practices that how we will do the coding. This means the one is the international standard. The other one is that we may have our own standard that what we are supposed to do. And for that means hopefully for better understanding and for better dealing, we may means come up with a format like a checklist where we put what are the options and what are the options, what are the do's and what are means not to do. So we can check them and then we can integrate those all checks while we are developing our life cycle, software life cycle even. So this practice, these things, you remember we need to start from a very scratch the moment we started designing our software. So you just go back and refer to the previous lectures when we discussed the threat modeling. So you remember that even threat modeling is actually at the early stages of the life cycle. So we have to have the checklist means which is the very good practice where we know that what things we are supposed to do and what things we are not supposed to do and what things we are supposed to check and what things we are not supposed to check. So this will actually make us more comfortable and make us easy to means follow the standard coding standards as well. So now we need to implement of these practices and to mitigate the most common software vulnerabilities. What he means that if suppose we are doing these type of the practices, in-house practices, they will help us to mitigate the major type of the vulnerabilities. Okay, so keep in mind that while we are following these standards, we are minimizing the chances, minimizing the number of the vulnerabilities, minimizing the means number of the issues, if we can say in general. So you may not, sorry, you may not means think that by doing this, actually we are going to means end everything. No, this is not possible because there are so many vectors which we are supposed to handle with related to the security. So generally it is means this practice is very good and it is very less expensive because if we have standards, our own standards, we have the format and we have the check and balance on the coding while we are starting. So this is very less expensive once we are following with the means normal procedure from the start of the software and up to the end of the software. So this is known as very means less expensive. Less expensive, it means that it will not require a lot of time from us, not required a lot of efforts from us, not required a lot of the cost from us. But in case if suppose we are missing these things, then that process will be means highly means costly for us at the end if suppose we found any issues or any problem. So sometime if suppose we found any issues or any problem and we didn't notice them at the standard, we didn't follow any standards at this means start, then in that particular cases, we are even not able to handle them. So that's why they even means bring the more losses and sometimes even we discontinue our softwares as well. So it is the good practices that we have to be very much careful while we are starting from the scratch. So we have to follow all of the standards and we may follow our own standards as well as the means international standards for the making the secure coding to work the softwares properly. Now, what are the software security and risk principles overview? So this slide will give us that what could be the risk if suppose we are following and what is the actually software security as well. So you can see the first point it is explaining us that building the secure software requires a basic understanding of security principles. So what type of the security, basic security principles? Basic security principles are Like suppose, as you know, that security itself is a kind of umbrella. It has the multiple vectors, it has the multiple ways, it has the multiple aspects. So security is for the communication security, network security, system security, software security, coding. So there are so many things. So we have to be aware that what aspects we are supposed to handle. Okay, this is the most important point to make our software secure. The second point, the goal of the software security is what we have to have some goal, that to maintain the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, which is the CIA model, which we discussed several times, of the information resources in order to enable the business operations. So for any company, for any organization, while we are designing the software, so we have to consider that we are maintaining the CIA principles. So that will be means not bringing any kind of the lost data to the organization. So how we can accomplish this goal? So we can accomplish this goal by using implementing the security controls. So as we discussed that we already defined, there are so many different aspects. So we have to check, we have to have the list so we can follow that, and then it will help us actually to reach to our goal. Now, what is the next? The technical control is specific, the mitigation and occurrence of the common software vulnerabilities. This is the another aspect as well. So while we are writing and following security principles, we have to be careful, even for the things that what we are supposed to do and what things we are not supposed to do. Again, there are the few of the things we can include in the software based on the requirement, based on the software. Then in those cases where we know that even there are the security concerns are there, not security issues, but we can say the security concerns are there. Like if you remember that we discussed it in our earlier lectures, where we say that we cannot mitigate the 100%. We cannot say that the software what we are designing, so we cannot say that the 100% we follow the security standards, and there is nothing, a component, a code, any method which is even having a less amount of the chances for the security vulnerabilities, and we mark it out, or we take it out. So sometime to run for the smooth run of the operations means we allow some of the modules, we allow some of the methods, but with what we do that we try to minimize their threat levels. We minimize their threat levels and we bring it into the safer zone. So even what we means here, that even if suppose they are in a safer zone, so we may have in our code secondary plan must be there, that in case if suppose that the thing which is in the safe zone, but what happens if suppose it is going to be exploited by any of the hackers, then or anything will be happen, then we may have a remedy, we may have a mitigation, we may have an automated system to overcome this issue. So this is how we are supposed to handle these points as well. Now, security, the secure coding practices checklist, like what we are saying, that we are supposed to follow the checklist and follow this thing and that thing. This is the most important point. But what is the actually secure coding practice checklist? The checklist itself is a very huge, it's very big, and it is for each phase of the SDLC, and it starts with the start of the planning of the software, and it goes up to the ending of the implementation of the software, and even means after the implementation, even while during for the maintenance of the software as well. So here today we will see that what type of the things which should be the checklist. We will not be able to discuss or describe all of them, because those checkpoints maybe not in hundreds, but it will be in thousands. But we try to come up with a few of them to show you clearly that which are the major one we are supposed to consider. So we will try to have the one of the file to show you, so you can imagine that how much it is the actually checklist which is supposed to be followed. So not to be worried that why these are so many checklist options and questions are, because it is actually start from the start of the software and it goes to the maintenance phase of the software. So we are supposed to implement while the whole cycle of the software or duration of the software It depends on the software to software. Sometimes we have the duration in months and in years as well. Now you can see from here in the checklist, the first and the most important point, which is about the input validation. This is very important because we are trying to avoid the SQL injection and other issues and other problems what they are. So you can see from here that we have to conduct all data validation on trusted systems, like suppose the servers. So it means that we need to go for the data validation testing. Whatever the data we are adding in our system, in our software, we must have the validation. And that validation, what we are doing, it must be on trusted system as well. So it doesn't mean that we have doing the validation and we are not doing this on the trusted system, then maybe we face a problem. So what it means, once we deploy our system, so whenever we go for the validation, we have a mechanism that, okay, this will be going to that or the trusted system, like the servers or any trusted system. So we need to identify all data sources and classify them into the trusted and untrusted zone. So you remember what we did in the threat model. So we defined the different zones. And you remember we just discussed a couple of minutes before that we cannot take everything out, but we can drag them in the safe zone. So we have to here mention and mark them what is the trusted and what are not trusted. So validate all the data from the untrusted sources. So anything which is coming from the untrusted source, we have to validate. Either it is database, either it's a file, either it's a stream, whatever it is, we are supposed to validate them very properly. So there should be a centralized input validation routine for the application. So it means that whatever the input we are receiving, we are targeting, we are focusing for our software, we have to have the validation mechanism, proper validation mechanism for this. And determine if the system supports the UTF-8 extended character set or whatever the other character set, we have to make sure about its validation as well. Okay, so the rest of the validations, especially we should to specify the proper character sets like the UTF, whatever the character set it is using, we have to have the validation and verification process for all of them. We need to validate all of the clients provided the data before processing, including their parameters like HTTP, their URLs, their headers, their contents, their cookies, their names, their videos, any type of contents which are coming from the client, we have to validate them, and then only we can process. So we can be able to save our system. This is the most important point. Verify that the header values in the requested responses, they are thoroughly mentioned and what procedure they are using. So these are the few only of the example what we just discussed here. But in actual, there are so many different things related to the input and output validation methods. So we have to be careful. As I discussed, as I mentioned, that here we are just considering a few of them which are the most important one. But there are so many, and we have to take care about as many as it is possible. Now, in the next slide, you can see the input validation is still continue, because it's still continue. We may find in hundreds of the checklist items, but we try to come up with a few of them. So even the few of them, they are very important for us. So to validate for the expended or expected data types as well, because sometimes if we not applying the validation for the data type, so it might create the problem as well for us. So we have to validate the data type, their range, their length, and how the input is coming, about the spacing, about the special characters, and check for the null bytes and everything. So we try to make sure that whatever the input is coming from the user, that two things, that one is that input is correct and it will going to the for processing, which will not harm our system and not harm the speed of our system. Second thing, that we are making sure that whatever the input is coming to our system, that will not create any trouble or any problem or any way of exploitation to our system. So that's why this is the first and the most important part which comes under the validation of the system. So Later, we can go for the output encoding. In the same way, for the input means output encoding is very important as well. Again, there are so many means checklist items we are supposed to check for. But a few of them, we just enlist them here. So you can see from here, conduct all of the encoding on the untrusted systems, like for the servers. And we need to utilize a standard tested routine for each of the type of the outbound encoding. So output, encode, all of the data returned from the clients are returned to the clients. They are organized outside applications, trusted boundaries, whatever the HTML or whatever we are using. It must be means checked and validated. And we need to encode all the characters in whatever we are using. So in a way that we are making sure that even whatever the output encoding is there for the trusted data, for SQL, for XML, or for the LDAP. LDAP is actually the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. So these all things we are supposed to make sure what we are trying to make sure about the input as well. So output encoding means equally important as it is for the input encoding as well. Now the authentication and password management. This is the more critical area, more critical part of the means checklist for the secure coding, that we are supposed to see all of the aspects which are related for the means authentication and password. The two things. One thing is about the authentication, and the second thing is about the password. So we need to require authentication for all pages. Whatever the pages we are allowing in our system, wherever it is necessary, we need to have the authentication. How? Say, for example, if you notice that for in the banking system, when you are wishing to log into the banking system, so the banking system is asking the password, and even sometime it is going for the two-way verification. So even you put the password, you put the verification, and you do everything. After that, you log in. But when you are going to trying to do the transaction, again there is another verification step is waiting for you. So this is something very important. So this is the example for you. Then the same way, if suppose you are using your email accounts, so for going to inside the email accounts, again you require what? You require your authentication mechanism. You require your passwords and everything is standards. Once you are in, but now after in, you already provided the password and everything. But in case you suppose you wish to go to the setting and you want to make the changes in your profile, then again the server will ask you the password. That please, and even server knows that you are the owner, you already signed in. So what it means that we have to make sure that for any of the additional option, wherever we want to go and wherever it is necessary and wherever it is important, that we have to manage about the password standards as well. And then we have to establish and utilize the standard tested authentication services whenever it is possible, and we have to follow all of the password standards, whatever the standards are suggested for us. So this is the most important point, and the same thing about the authentication as well, because this is the most critical part in our software, which can lead to our software towards the successful way, or even it can lead to the failure way. So we need to use a centralized implementation for all authentication control. So including the libraries and everything, we may have one central control from where we can use the authentication. Why we have the one central control? Because if we use the distributed mechanism, then again, this will be the threat or the risk for maybe that system itself is going to be hacked or compromised, and again, we will be in the trouble. So all authentications should be failed in case if suppose someone is trying to attempt it illegally, or some of the user, he or she is forget about the password and other details. So in case if suppose system is going to be failed, then fail also securely, fail also properly. What do you mean by the fail? Like suppose some of the user is not able to provide the password, then our system must handle this issue in a proper way, like what we are doing. 2 or 3 attempts, user is not able to, then we are requesting to the user that seems you forget the password, so please go to reset your password. There is a proper mechanism. Everybody cannot reset the password. and we give them the chances for the 3 times. And if it is more than 3 times, sorry, we stop them from going for the login. Why we stop them from the login? Because it means that if it is the real user and he or she forget the password, he or she can go to reset the password, because maybe he is knowing his email, maybe he's for sure he will be knowing his email, for sure he will be knowing about the secret question and other options, whatever the procedures settle there. But if suppose the right user is not there, then maybe that will not be possible for that particular person to reset the password rules. So we can say that these all are the password procedures and rules. What we discussed, they are equally important, and we are supposed to handle them very properly for all of them. On top of that, the all authentications, as we discussed, that we must be keeping them at the central level, and the password hashing must be implemented on the trusted system as well. So we need to take care about hashing, about the storage, about the policies, about the password, about the password length, about how to log in, and about how many attempts, and in case of the failure, in case of successful, what will happen, in case of failure, what will happen, and how we can lend the user to any of the new page if suppose the password is required, so on and so on. Now, as we discussed, that this is the most important, you will find in the checklist there are so many things that are related to this particular point, which is the authentication and the password management. So in a case if suppose the user is providing the invalid name or the invalid password, so what is the security measure? You notice most of the time, if suppose you provide something is wrong, even the username is correct, password is wrong. Or if suppose you know that you are providing the username is wrong and password is correct, you as a user, you are knowing, but you will receive a message from the system. Always the system will be saying that possibly either one of the thing is wrong. The system is knowing that what is wrong. Either the point that the username is wrong or the password is wrong. But system will not notify the user. System will notify that either one of the thing is wrong. So why it is doing like this? Why the system is not exactly letting us know that what is wrong? Yeah, that is actually also the enhancing the security. So we are just trying to give a hint, but not giving the right hint to the user. Because if he or she is a correct user, so that he or she may be able to reach to the required user ID or user password. So this is the one of the things which is the most important. Now we have to carefully check about the HTTP and about the post and everything. This is the most important point actually for the password. So authentication and password mechanism. So there are so many different points that are supposed to be checked. So this is how we in our checklist we are supposed to make sure that all of the things, all of the points, all of the the things what we discussed, they are properly addressed, properly notified, and properly handled in the software with the help of the coding. Now going ahead next to the next slide, so you can see from here that even we as a system, our software, we need to handle in the code that how much length of the password we should be there. And we need to make sure that what is the actually safer recommended length of the software. So we have to follow that one as well. And we have to give the number of attempts to the user. How many attempts user can give? Means 3 attempts or 5 attempts. This depends on the software to software. Then we have to see that if suppose the user is reaching to that particular attempt, we may not give him a chance to go for the further attempt. Why? Because this is, we are trying to handle, there are so many types of the attacks which are going to be taken attempt again and again, randomly testing the passwords and trying to reach to the successful password. So if suppose this is the case, we can stop them, and after stopping, we can give them a time, maybe the 5 minutes or 10 minutes, that user will not be able to log in. Then the user will be able to log in after that particular time. These things are very important as well as very critical as well. Most of the means things which are the positive impact, but sometime in a very rare cases, maybe we can say that they have the some of the negative impact as well. Say for example, I can give you one of my own example that for one of my Google account I was using, and my password was saved, and means a lot of time I was just forget to mischange the password. What happened? I changed my machine, and my old machine was means So what happened? Somehow my password was means missed from the me, and then I was trying to access the system, and I was not able to access. And then he asked the password from me, and then what happened that I tried multiple times. System locked me. Then system gave me the options to go to retrieve your password, and by chance I used my cell phone to means receive the call or the message SMS for the code. And unluckily I changed my cell phone number as well, because I didn't change the password for almost years. So my previous number was means not functional. I was not able to receive the call. I was not able to receive the message as well, because that was my second authentication protocol was there. So what happened? Finally, I lost my account. I tried to contact to the Google team multiple times. The Google team was asking the same things, that we can send the information to your cell phone what you means provided. So from here, we learn a lesson as well, that whenever we provide these security questions and these things, we have to be careful that what we are providing and the system in number or whatever things we are providing. So we have to know that maybe this will be means available to us for the all of the times. So these are the most important points that what we are supposed to means consider for the related to the password management system. Again, if suppose we go ahead, so you can see the next slide is even coming for the authentication and the password management system, because this is the most important point, and that's why we have to have a great list, a great number of the items in the checklist for this particular part. So what he is suggesting, even though we apply all of the mechanisms for any type of change, any time of change, any type of change, any time of change, we as software must have a capability to inform the users. And even most of the means applications now, what they are doing, even suppose you are changing your graphical location, geolocation, and you are logging from the other means location, so they are keep you updating that your account is get logged in from that particular location. This is for the safety. And if suppose you are going to log in from not from the same machine, you are changing your machine again, you will be receiving the notification that your account has been logged in from this IP and from this particular machine. If suppose you have any issue, let us know. Otherwise, if you are doing at your own, so this is okay. So these all mechanisms are also we must take care in our software to handle them very means appropriately, very carefully, that to enhance the security of our software. So you notice that this is the most important part, which is the authentication and the password management. So now going ahead, the next important thing is about the session management. So I hope that you all are aware about the session. We know that what is the session. Session management is a very important thing. We are handling the session, means there is the session default value, but we are handling the session in our critical applications. How we are handling the session in the critical applications to control the security. Say for, sorry. Say for example, if suppose you are using any financial application or any critical application, and in case if suppose you are not interacting with your particular application for a while, it means the time. It depends application to application. What is the time set for the session? So you will notice that system forcefully logged you out. Sometimes you notice that system is giving you the chance or opportunity by mentioning you that your session is soon going to be expired. Would you like to extend it or not? So this is also to enhancing the security. Like in case you suppose maybe you are leaving unattended your system, and what happened then? Anyone can else can means because system is already logged in, so anyone else can use your system and maybe they can exploit your account. So the session is a very important aspect to enhance our security. So we need to handle in our code that how we can handle the session, how we can create the session, how we can verify the session, how we can control the session, and how the session will be means helpful for us, means will be helping us to control the security of the system. So we need to follow all of these standards for the session functionality. This is the also important aspect. So we need to check from means input, from the output, from the authentication, from the password management, and as well as to the session management. So you can see that's why we are discussing that there are so many different vectors. So you can see that the everything is having the different aspect and everything is directly linked with the security of our software. So we need to take care about these all of the things in our coding, and in the coding we have to have a proper checklist which we just follow for those all phases. At what phase we are reaching, we just follow that particular checklist for that particular phase, and then we can make sure that we are okay, we are done. Then we only can proceed to the next section. So this is the right procedure for making the secure coding, and this standard for what we are following, that is known as the secure coding standards. Now, after having the session management, here we have the means multiple points we mentioned, but most of the points we already discussed, and the other points, they are simple, just only means it requires the one time read, so you can go through. That's why we just added it here. So these all things are important, and now we are going after the session management. We are trying to approach the next level, which is sorry, which is actually about the access control. Now the access control is means the same important value. If suppose any unauthorized person is going to access to your software, or any person who is even authorized, if he or she is going to access to the unauthorized part of your software, then maybe that unauthorized access create a problem or troubles for our software. You notice that for any of the software, we have different user levels. We have different access levels as well. So the same software can be accessed 20% or 30% from the group A of the employees. Group B of employees, maybe they can access 50%. Group C of employees, they can access the 70%. And group D of employees, maybe like 100%, like in this way. So we have to manage the access control. Like say, for example, if suppose we have at the backend database, we may not give a direct access to the database to any of the user, but we allow them to have the access to the database using the means norms and the standards. So nobody can have a chance to make any issue or any problem for our means database. So in case if suppose the access control means if suppose it's going to be failed for any of the reason. The failure means sometimes our means request or sometimes our query is not successful. Then in that particular case, our system should not be means hanged. Our system should not be completely stop working, but it may be having a procedure that it is going to be failed in a safer way, going to be failed in a proper way, going to be failed successfully. What do we mean by successfully? As we discussed previously as well, then in that particular case, the system may fail that particular component, but may not stop all of the operations what we are doing for the rest of the files, rest of the system. So access control is means equally important, like we have the session control, and the most importantly is the authentication and password, and then input and output as well. So we have to be careful to check all of these changes what are actually required to follow them to make sure that these things are not creating a problem. None of the input, none of the output, none of the session, none of the access control, none of the means any other mechanism or way or operation, they are means able to create any trouble or problem for our means application. And these all things we are supposed to handle properly while we are doing the coding. That's why we call this as the secure coding, and we call secure coding standard. So we have to have some of the principles, checklists, the standards that we are supposed to follow as we mention here. But please remember, these things what we mentioned here from the OWASP, they are only the few of them. The most importantly, we just share with you, but there are so many other items as well, which are supposed to be taken care at each of the step. So in access control, we have to restrict the direct object references, as we just discussed, that we may not give the direct access to the database to anyone, but we have to follow the proper procedures and the proper ways. So we may not give the more privileges, more access to anyone, or we may not stop the more access or more privileges from the required, desired user. So we have to be careful about all of the aspects of the access control. Going ahead, what are the next? We must have a single user or a drive which can perform a given period of time. Means we may have the procedure to handle these requests. So now what happened, because we are remotely, but again I hope that you are aware about the concept which is known as the connection pooling. So if you don't know about the connection pooling, you just search for this concept. You will be able to find out that what's connection pooling, and further I'm describing to you. Connection pooling is a concept where while we are accessing to our servers, like suppose you are using Gmail, you are using Hotmail. So you just imagine at the one time how many people are using their Hotmail ID or using their Gmail ID or any of the email ID. So it means number of the users, not in million, but maybe for some of the emails, maybe in billion as well, if suppose we consider for a Gmail, or at least if we consider in millions at the same time, because how many people we have in one city, they all have the access for the internet, they have the email account. How many then we have in the one state, then how many we have in the one country, then how many we have in the world. So everybody is using, say for example, Google Gmail. So how many people they are accessing, they don't have any timetable. So they are accessing randomly. So it means at the same simultaneously time, there are the millions of people, they are trying to connect with the server. So what do we mean by the access control? We are using them, connecting them using the connection pooling. The connection pooling is actually what we are doing, that we open objects which are the open connections in the pool. Those pools are actually not connected with the user. They are actually connected with the server. And those connections in the connections in the connection pool, they are normally not dedicated to any of the user. Say for example, I want to connect with my email account. I need to put my ID and email. And after having the ID and email, what do you think when I'm inside the my system? Do you think that I'm at the runtime I'm connected with the server? No, not. I'm not connected with the server, but they are handling my request through the connection pooling. The moment I get successful login, so I can see there is a snap, there is the what we can say the snap or the picture which is in front of me, which is my inbox. So that is not, I'm not connected, means my connection is not continuously open with the server. Now whenever I'm scrolling that up and down, the moment I click to any one particular email, then again my request goes to that particular connection pooling, and then it open the server and it fetch the one another recent picture according to that, and it can bring it to me. So meanwhile, in the connection pooling, that object which is handling my request, I'm doing this in between time. Maybe he handled 1,000 of the requests for the other users from the different locations. Whenever they are approaching, they are reaching their connections to the connection pooling, but we are not allowing them the direct access to our servers. We are not allowing them the direct access to our database. We are not allowing it, because if suppose we allow them, then what happens? Then it will be creating a very huge issue, a very huge problem for the security concern. Now the cryptographic practices. This is also the most important part. Mainly we are using for the communication purpose. So we need to means all cryptographic functions used to protect our means secrets, whatever the secrets are, wherever the secrets are. So we need to need to use the cryptographic techniques. And as you remember that there are so many different cryptographic techniques. We call them asymmetric, we call them symmetric, we call them means based on their functionalities, we group them based on their functionalities. We have the different means techniques for the lightweight networks, we have the different for the Internet of Things networks, we have different for the wireless networks, we have different techniques and schemes for our conventional network. So we have to utilize based on what type of our requirements are, our application is required. We have to follow these all cryptographic techniques to make sure that our software, our system is going to be work normal and smooth as well at the same time. Now the next point is about the error handling. The error handling is the most important point because when we are having any error, how it is the most important point in multiple aspects. Number one aspect is in case if suppose any error is there from the user due to any reason, maybe malfunctioning of the software, maybe based on the input of the user, maybe on the output, whatever it is. Okay, we have to handle it in a wisely and we have to pass the information to the user, only the information which is means necessary for the user, but we may not pass all of the information which may cause any issue or the reason or the problem for our software, which may help to the hackers, which can means utilize that information against us. So these all things are very important. And in error handling, also we have to be careful in case if suppose some error is coming, then we have to handle it successfully, automatically, successfully. Successfully because a sort of the error, type of the error, depending if suppose some of the error are minimum, we have to handle it and we have to means keep running software smoothly. In case if suppose the error are critical, then we have to handle it and we have to fail that user's request in a successful manner. Successful manner again that we are means handling, we are taking care that our whole process of our operation or our software is not going to stop just because of this. Otherwise, maybe the users will continue doing this and our software will stop working. So this will be something dangerous. So we have to handle these things handle these things in our coding. So that's what we are saying that this is the secure coding. We can handle them at that stage, at that point. So these for all of the things that in case if suppose anything is going to happen, we can control, we can continue our operations. So we have to maintain the log. We have to maintain that nobody is going to tamper our information, and we have to ensure that whatever the log reports we are generating, they are useful and up to the required information only. And in case if suppose it is necessary, we have to follow the cryptographic hash functioning and other techniques to keep them safe. So this is also going to be necessary to handle at the error handling stage. Now the data protection itself, file protection itself, memory protection itself. So you can see that everything is important. So we have to save our data and we have to save our coding as well. So we have to implement the least privileges. How we can save it? We may not give all of the privileges. So most of the time you notice that most of the companies, they are giving us the software. We are running the software, but we don't have a privilege. We don't have access to the code. The best example is whatever you are using, the softwares for Office, the softwares for Windows, which are the most common. But do you think that means you are having the access to the code? No, you cannot. You cannot. For most of the software, you cannot. For your PowerPoint, what we are using right now, you may not have the code for this one. So we have to protect our data. These things we have to handle. And how we can protect our data, and we are not giving the access to the data to the user, and we are not giving them the privileges what they are actually required, and we are practicing the cryptographic techniques. We are hiding them and we are keeping them safe, and we are just giving them the privileges whatever the privileges are allowed. So the same mechanism we need to do this to protect our data. We can do it for protecting our files, and we can do to protect our memory as well. So data protection is highly important. In case if suppose our data is going to be accessed by any person, means illegally, or any person due to the means higher privileges, then what happened? Then this will create a problem. Say for example, if any of the user is going to delete your primary data, which is the base of your program to run, so then what happened? Your program will start malfunctioning. So we just need to give the access what the access is actually required, not more than this. Now, communication security. Again, as we discussed, communication security is very important as well. Whenever we are supposed to transfer the data packets from one point to the another point, we are supposed to be very careful to handle them, that how these things are and how we are handling them, as we discussed multiple time again, that we can handle this by doing the cryptographic techniques, the different cryptographic techniques, and we need to choose the right cryptographic techniques for right applications, for right solutions, which can be best fit for us. So we have to be very much careful. We have to apply the SSL, TLS, and so many other things. So we need to make sure that everything is working, functioning. So now the system configuration. We need to make sure that once we are writing a code, how it will integrate with the system. What requirement of the system is actually required for that particular software. So we have to turn out the directory listing, and we have to make sure that what things we can give the access to the user and what things we can give the access to the suppose for the administrator, and how system will handle this the routines for our software and all the other things. So you notice here that we are controlling, we are thinking, we are considering all of the aspects, even system configuration, even input, even output. Even we are considering that the communication security as well, secure coding as well, passwords as well, authentication mechanism as well. So we are supposed to take care to handle for all of the points from the start of the design up to the implementation, and even we can say up to the maintenance of the software. This is the most important point which can only make our system successful. Now, after the system configuration, if suppose we handle system configuration properly, that what resources of the system we will be using, what resources we will not, and what resources our software can allow to the system, and what resources our software is not allowing to the system, and so on and so other things. We already mentioned here, we already enlisted here, because these are the simple points. You can just go through with that. We have to make sure that everything is properly done and handled at our software while we were writing the code all that. Now, database security. So database security, as we discussed, it's highly important. That's why we don't allow the users to access our database directly. Most of the applications, the database is also not at the front end. The database is always at the back end. And we have the proper mechanisms from the front end, we can access to the database. And we can access to the database only for those things which are required. Means we not give the entire access, or we not give the maximum access, or we not give the higher privileges to the database. We don't give it to anyone. So why we don't give to anyone? To handle the security of the software. And this is equally important as well. So this is how we can handle this while we will be writing the code for this one. So while we are designing the database and applying the policies and the schema, that comes under the coding as well. So not to be worried that how we will do that. That part is also the backend part, the database, and these things are also coming under the same classification, the same criteria. So after the database security, which is the very important and the most importantly, as we discussed, that it is necessary that we have to see about their schemas, what access we can give, what tables we can allow to the administrator, and even we are not giving the complete access most of the softwares to the administrator as well. We just try to make sure that what access we are trying to give only and only which is actually required for the successful operations, not more than this. Then the file management. Now the data management is at the larger scale, but now we are considering looking for the file management as well, means at the file entity level as well, even at the lower scale as well. So We need to see the file management, memory management. We need to see about the database management. We need to see the session management. We need to see the password authentication, everything to see all of the aspects we are trying to manage. So for the files as well, we have to be means making sure that the security of the file, that nobody can be able to change in the file, nobody is able to means duplicate the data, or nobody can has a right to make the changes in the header of the file, and wherever the files are located, they are in safe at the safe location, and does not have any person the high privileges to play with that. So we need to be very careful about these all aspects as well. Further, you can please go through and see from this list of the file management as well. Now about the memory management. In memory management, we have to see that how many resources our system will be required, how it will means take a part with the share from the memory management, how much memory it may means required for the printing, for the scanning, and for the other application. This depend on application to application. How to utilize the input and output controls while we are using. So how much memory we will be required, how much memory our system will be required for the processing, and how that particular memory, which is the requirement of our system, we are managing its security with the help of the code. So these are the at the top we can see these things are the simple one, but these things are very important. We have to follow these all checklists. As we mentioned, that these checklists are just a few of them, a sample of them. But in actual, there are a lot of things which we are supposed to, everybody is supposed to handle them. So now the general coding means standards as well. Generally, this was we were focusing on some of the specific aspects. Like we focus on the memory management, the file management, the database management, the access management, and suppose the password management and authentication mechanism, whatever. So they were the very means specific to some of these specific. But now as a whole, as a general coding practices, what we are supposed to do. We need to use the tested and approved managed code rather than creating the new unmanaged code for the common task. We need to use a proper coding techniques as well. This is the most important as well. Whatever the APIs we are using, whatever the codes we are using, whatever the libraries we are using, we have to make sure that those libraries, those APIs, they are safe as well. Means we may apply all these principles, all these rules on the softwares and the tools what we are doing. But what happens if suppose we are means requesting for the some of the tools or some of the APIs from the other side, and they might have some of the issues. So we have to be very much careful about these things as well. And generally, other than these points, what could be the possibilities which may harm to our software? We have to be very much particular about that, and we have to follow the same standards what we are following the standards in specific cases as well. So once we are done with these things, so now I will try to show you the one of the means if suppose I can find it out, I hope I can show you something which you can realize that how many and means the items in the checklist are, and how much it is important as well at the same time. So this is means we say thanks to the OWASP, and means credit goes to them. With thanks that because this all of the information we took from them. Now, if suppose I just try to make sure, if suppose I can find out the details that what are the actually checklist items, then I will try to share with you in case if suppose I can find. Otherwise, I will find out because I know that I had this one with me, and then you will be able, and then I will be able to share with you. So maybe possibly just give me the 1 minute. I can try to pinpoint now if it is possible right now. Otherwise, I can share it with you maybe later on. Okay. Maybe not able at this moment, at this stage, but I have
Sir.
Yeah, maybe that list is not at this time with me. So if you have any questions, please go for that, and then we will go for the attendance. Yes, please.
Sir, I think you have skipped one lecture.
Come again, please.